What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Christmas. Here we are, still in our December calendar here, looking at December 5th and December 6th. We're going to be continuing looking at St. Nicholas, one of the major players in the Christmas and Advent season. He's more than just another name for Santa Claus. So this is going to be part 2 of probably 3, possibly 3.5 to 4 weeks worth of stuff on St. Nicholas. Last time we looked at the life of St. Nicholas, the life and legend of the historical / legendary saint, the bishop from Myra in Turkey, and how his body got moved from Turkey to Italy in the year 1087, and it is actually shortly after that date, 1087, what's called the translation of the relics of St. Nicholas, that the celebration of St. Nicholas Day starts to become very popular in Europe. So in the late 11th and 12th centuries, after the translation of the relics, St. Nicholas Day starts to become a major celebration. For example, a big part of that was that it was an occasion that you could use to help the poor, like St. Nicholas himself did, following his example. And so, for example, French nuns were known to use that day to give candy and gifts to needy children, starting around 1100. And then ultimately, on a less religious note, having this kind of wintertime festival day also allows for the continuation of a line of wild winter feasts that included wearing costumes, wild, loud, raucous drinking, singing, merrymaking, and then also the inversions of usual social norms, kind of a topsy-turvy world where the first become last, the last become first. These kind of winter festivals where things are turned upside down, they go back at least as far as the Roman celebration of Saturnalia, which you can see depicted in this speculative painting here of what imagining what Saturnalia might have been like. That was a December festival celebrating the god Saturn. But we're not talking about Saturnalia right now. We're talking about St. Nicholas. And one of the earliest customs for celebrating St. Nicholas was a custom called the boy bishop. And you can see here's the boy bishop here. It's not just a particularly short fellow here. This is actually a child with some other children behind him. So the idea of the boy bishop is that a young boy, a school-age boy, would be elected by his classmates to become the boy bishop. This maybe sounds a little random. Then you remember that St. Nicholas, he's the patron of children, and he was a bishop. So combining children and bishops, and, like I said, the idea of role reversals, topsy-turviness, inversion of typical social structures, very common for these wintertime holidays. And so that's a similar kind of thing going on here, where you take a child and then you elevate that child to one of the highest positions in society at that time, the bishop, the overseer of all the churches in a particular area. And so this boy bishop would be, they would basically take the role of the actual bishop until the Feast of the Holy Innocents, which is on December 28th, another religious feast day that's associated with children. We'll talk more about that when we get to that part of our calendar. But as you can see in the picture, the boy dresses in full bishop's attire. He wears robes and a mitre. Again, a bishop's mitre is not called a pope hat. A bishop's mitre carries the crozier, which is this staff with the curled end here. And we have his crowd of schoolmates dressed as priests as his attendants. Then they actually go around town, they bless people, and even in the cathedral, which is the church where the bishop is centered, where the bishop works out of. That's the cathedral, and the boy bishop would take over the cathedral, do all the regular ceremonies except the mass, which is a serious deal and actually requires an actual consecrated priest. And so that they took too seriously to let a child do it. But the other things they could do. And like I said, this was very popular. It was common in continental Europe, like Germany and France, but it gained a lot of popularity in England. That's where it really kind of blew up, and it lasted for a few hundred years, until about the early Renaissance, basically, when eventually the church kind of says, okay, this is silly, let's cut this out. But as with many of these kind of strange medieval customs that we're going to be looking at and have been looking at, it has been revived in modern times. And like I said, in England, especially in Hereford, England, there's been a modern revival of the idea of the boy bishop. And starting in the 70s, but then annually since 1982, Hereford, England has elected a boy bishop, actually a child bishop, I should say, because starting probably later than you might expect, they started electing girl bishops as well in about 10, 12 years ago. But they've been doing this tradition annually since 1982, kind of reaching back to an old medieval custom. But yeah, so that's the boy bishop, one of the earliest St. Nicholas traditions that caught on in some places, but didn't kind of become a lasting universal thing. The most popular celebration of St. Nicholas Day happens in the Netherlands, as well as the neighboring countries and surrounding areas of Belgium, Luxembourg, northern France, Western Germany. This area here that you can see in this map, these countries here known as the Benelux countries, right, for Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Benelux, also formerly known as the Low Countries, which is what the word Netherlands means. They're called the Low Countries because it's a lowland area close to the sea. So in these areas is where the celebration of St. Nicholas is most popular. In Dutch, which is what they speak in most of the Netherlands, St. Nicholas is called Sint Nicolaas, but more commonly known as Sinterklaas, which is, yes, you can probably hear it is the origin of the name Santa Claus, but we'll talk about the transition from Sinterklaas to Santa Claus in some other week a little bit later. Yeah, in Dutch he's known as Sinterklaas, where they also call him de Sint, which just means the saint, or de Goede Sint, the good saint, or de Good Heilig Man, which means the good holy man. He's known by all of those things in Dutch. In French, which obviously they speak in northern France, and then in some of these neighboring areas in Belgium, they call him Saint Nicolas. He's known as Sinterklaas in West Frisian, which they speak in this area up here, Friesland. They speak Frisian. Sinterklaas in Limburgish, and there you can see the Limburgs. There's Dutch Limburg and Belgian Limburg here. Sinterklaas. Saint Nicolai in West Flemish, that's over here. Flemish, they speak in this area of Belgium. Klaesjen and Sinterklaas in Luxembourgish, which is what they speak in Luxembourg. And Sankt Nikolaus, or Nikolaus in German, which of course they speak here in Germany, and then some of these adjoining areas. And not related to Christmas, but while we're looking at this map, if you look right here, you can see that is Zeeland. If you've ever thought about New Zealand and said, I wonder where Old Zealand is, well, now you know. It's right here. There it is. That's Old Zealand right there. Okay, anyway, so surveys of Dutch people have found that the celebration of Sinterklaas is the #1 most important cultural tradition to the Dutch people, ahead of even Christmas and birthdays. The #1 thing Dutch people want to do to keep up is the celebration of Sinterklaas. So while the celebration of St. Nicholas Day has had its ups and downs over the history of the Middle Ages, and we'll talk about that some in a future week. It really, in the 19th century, the 1800s, St. Nicholas blew up in popularity again thanks to a popular children's book, which you can see the cover here, St. Nicholas in sein Knecht, which means St. Nicholas and his servant. Which this was by a school teacher named Jan Schenkman, and this was a hugely popular book, which I would imagine is probably still read today. It influenced a lot of modern St. Nicholas celebration customs. And also, one of the things that helped is that the celebration of Sinterklaas became a more secularized children's holiday, kind of similar to the way that a Santa Claus style Christmas in the United States has. It's a popular secularized holiday, which is kind of a different thing from the religious style Christmas with nativities and the religious carols and those kind of things. So in the same way that Santa Claus and reindeer and snowmen and elves and all that kind of stuff are kind of a secularized thing, similarly, Sinterklaas celebrations have largely become that, just a popular holiday for children and families, which really helped. We'll explain why that is, why that's important in a little bit. But so since that time in the 1800s, the celebration of St. Nicholas Day begins in mid-November when St. Nicholas, you can see him here on this very crowded boat, he arrives on a steamboat with his, yes, incredibly, deeply problematic companion, Zwarte Piet, which means Black Peter, or since World War II, Mini Piets, Mini Pieten, as they say, the plural in Dutch. You can see there are dozens of them on this boat. These guys in the colorful costumes with the hats, and you might notice, even though it's kind of zoomed way out, they're all in blackface. And we'll talk about that next time. We are not focusing on Zwarte Piet this week, although he will pop up a couple of times because he is a deeply entrenched part of Dutch Sinterklaas celebrations, and we will talk about that next time, but you will see this incredibly problematic face a couple more times. But in mid-November, Sinterklaas and the Pieten arrive in a steamboat from Spain, and then each year the steamboat docks in a different harbor, and then Sinterklaas parades through the town on his white horse, you can see here, to go and greet the mayor of the town. Like I said, each year it's a different town, so each town kind of gets the honor of greeting St. Nicholas each year. And then after that happens, there's a huge parade with like bands, brass bands, children singing songs to Santa Claus. They, of course, in Dutch they have popular children's songs, just in the same way that in America we have popular children's songs for Christmas. So they sing Sinterklaas songs, and then the Pieten, some of whom we can see here playing in the band, but they will also throw out like candies and cookies. You can see this Piet here has a bag reaching in. They have special cookies they call peppernoten. We'll talk a little bit more about those later on, but that's the popular Christmas cookie there. And those kind of things, they kind of give them out to children as they go through the town. And then after kind of the national arrival, which is broadcast on TV, then there will be individual towns holding their own parade, indicating, you saw Sinterklaas arrive in the country, now here he is arriving into our town. So, all right, so after the things I just said, you probably have a few questions. The first question that might have occurred to you is, why a steamboat? Why does Sinterklaas come in a steamboat? So, as is true of a lot of old traditions that go back, more than 100 years or 150 years, we don't always know exactly. There are some decent theories Why would St. Nicholas come on a steamboat? Well, one, if you remember, St. Nicholas is the patron and protector of sailors, and so having him on a boat seems reasonable. Also, in that period, in the 1800s, when modern Sinterklaas traditions began, the steamboat would have been a brand new, super cool, hip, modern, trendy kind of thing that you could do. And you know what? They're still cool, so why not? Why would you not have Sinterklaas come in on a big, cool boat? So the next question you might have is, why does St. Nicholas come from Spain? Why? That's a weird place to think that he might be from. We know St. Nicholas is from Turkey or the North Pole or is from Lapland or whatever you might believe. But why do the Dutch think that Sinterklaas lives in Spain? Well, again, nobody knows for sure, but if you remember the thing last week we talked about, one of the most important visual symbols of St. Nicholas is the three gold balls that he carries around. So those are supposed to represent the 3 bags of gold that he gave to the 3 sisters for their dowries in that story that we talked about last week. And, in art, the idea of bags of gold kind of got simplified down to just 3 golden spheres here. And if you're, an average, simple medieval person who maybe can't even read, you may not know this story, but you can look at the picture up on the wall in the church. You might wonder what are these things that he's carrying? A reasonable thing to think is that maybe these 3 golden balls are oranges. And you can see those there. Those were oranges, originally called apples of orange, as they were known. You can see here, this St. Nicholas has 3 oranges. And oranges were and still are a popular treat for St. Nicholas Day and for Christmas. Some of you might even get, an orange or a clementine or something like that in your stocking, or some places make decorations out of oranges to hang on the tree with candles and all. That's not uncommon. They would have been kind of a special wintertime luxury, and so if you live in the Netherlands or you live in continental Europe, where do oranges come from? Well, they come from Spain. Spain is where oranges come from. Think about Valencia oranges, named after the place in Spain, and so on. And so, if you know St. Nicholas is a guy who carries around oranges all the time, and he's got enough oranges to give them out to all the kids in the Netherlands, he must come from somewhere with a lot of orange groves, like Spain. Another possibility is, of course, we know that his body was transferred to Bari, which is in Italy, and you might go, well, why don't they say he lives in Italy? Well, it's a possibility that Bari was, it's a fact that Bari was once part of the Spanish kingdom of Naples. The history of Europe is really weird. If you have not learned European history, a lot of things were, a lot of places that we think of as being one place were once part of another place, and you might not even know about it. But that's a possibility, maybe because Bari used to be part of a Spanish kingdom. Maybe that's why. But also, possibly the connection comes from St. Nicholas's or Sinterklaas's association with Pete, who, since the 19th century, has been traditionally depicted as a Moor, who would have been Muslims that came in from northern Africa and invaded and conquered Spain in the Middle Ages. And so if his associate is from Spain, maybe he's also from there. And in fact, at one time they used to say, Dutch children were told that if they were especially naughty, Zwarte Piet would kidnap them and then take them off to Spain. And why is that a threat? Obviously, Spain is a very popular tourist destination these days, known for parties and really good food and that kind of thing. But in the Netherlands, which was highly Protestant, the idea of being taken to extremely Catholic Spain might have been very akin to be taken to, the bad place. And so that might raise your next question. The next question, which is, if an extremely Protestant country like if the Netherlands is extremely Protestant, why is their most popular holiday a celebration of a Catholic saint like St. Nicholas? Well, the answer to that is people love St. Nicholas, dude. Like, as we continue going, as we keep talking about the history, and especially as we get into the development of Santa Claus as a distinct personage from St. Nicholas, and as we look at Father Christmas and those kind of things, we're going to see very famous, powerful historical figures like Martin Luther and Oliver Cromwell try to suppress the popularity of St. Nicholas and Father Christmas. But it turns out that no matter the form, whether St. Nicholas, Father Christmas, or the other guy that you know of, you cannot keep Santa Claus down. Sorry, haters. You can't do it. Cannot be done. Santa Claus is too powerful. He's over 9,000. And like I said, the other thing that really helped with the acceptability of the celebration of Santa Claus in Protestant Netherlands is that the modern version of the celebration is highly secularized. All right, so another question you might have had, what about the horse? Tell me about the horse. Does Santa Claus's horse have a name? The answer is yes, of course, the horse has a name. Up until 2019, his horse was named Amerigo, like Amerigo Vespucci, but Amerigo retired in 2019 and has since been replaced by a horse named O Zo Snel, which means "oh so fast" in Dutch, which it's taken from a line in a popular Santa Claus song. In Belgium, the horse's name is Slecht Weer vandaag, which means bad weather today. That's based on a story in which there was a bad snowstorm, and Santa Claus has this new horse, and he's wondering what to name it. Pete comes into the stable, the roar of the storm behind him, and St. Nicholas says, "What should I name this new horse?" Pete can't hear him properly, and he says, "Bad weather today." And St. Nicholas thinks that's so funny that that's what he names the horse. So that's the story of the Belgian horse. Yeah, so O Zo Snel, oh so fast, is the name of the current St. Nicholas horse. Always white, or if you know horses, a gray, as they call them. So yeah, in the weeks following his arrival from Spain, Santa Claus and the various Peten travel around visiting hospitals, schools, malls. Sometimes they go door to door to homes. What they're doing is they're looking for which children have been good or bad, which they then record in St. Nicholas's big red book. The way they do that is, they ask them questions. Have you been good this year? What have you done? Then they might have them recite a poem or sing a little song. Used to be they were supposed to recite prayers, but as time goes on, it gets more modern and more secularized. That part has been taken away. So now it's more like just sing me a little song. Very good. You go on the nice list, and so on. Right. Once that is done, rather than setting up a Christmas tree, although they do set up Christmas trees for Christmas, but this is St. Nicholas Day again. We're talking about this is 3 weeks before Christmas. Children set out their shoes, and notice here that these are, the prototypically Dutch wooden shoes, which they do not wear anymore. They wear regular shoes, but it looks like some families have these kind of traditional wooden shoes that they use instead of their actual, shoes that they wear on a day-to-day basis. But you set out the shoes by the fireplace, or if you don't have a fireplace, maybe by the radiator, or by the door or the window, somewhere like that. And then you can see here in the pictures, these kids have done a drawing for Santa Claus. Sometimes they'll write a note or a letter, including like a wish list of what they would like. And then they also include hay and a carrot, sometimes like little bowls of water, things that are supposed to be treats for the horse, right? And so what is supposed to happen is that Santa Claus rides his horse over the rooftops, and then Pete drops down the chimney and then fills up the shoes with little treats, candies, chocolates, fruits, nuts, those cookies, things like that, maybe small toys. So yeah, if you're good, your shoe or your boot gets filled up. Obviously, this kid here was thinking a little smarter than these other kids with their little small shoes. It's like, what if I get a big old boot? Fill that one up, Sinterklaas. That's thinking with portals. But they used to warn that if you were bad, you might get a spanking from Zwarte Piet, who carried like a bundle of switches or a willow cane. That's true of a lot of St. Nicholas's companions. Again, we're going to look at companions next time, so we'll come back to that. With, again, the warning that really bad children would be carried off to Spain. But nowadays, children mostly worry that if they're naughty, they'll get coal or maybe a small bag of salt put inside of their shoe. So this visit from Sinterklaas, depending on the family, might happen multiple times in the weeks leading up to the Saint's Day, right? Once the saint comes to town, you put out your shoes, and he might come multiple times, maybe every day, maybe a couple times, maybe twice, maybe just once, depending on how your family likes to do it. Because again, these are just like little treats, little pieces of chocolate. Well, we'll talk about what these are in just a second, but you can see here this foil wrapped chocolate St. Nicholas here, that kind of stuff. The big giving day, however, is December 5th. So St. Nicholas Day is December 6th. So the big main event is December 5th in the Netherlands, which is St. Nicholas Eve, which in Dutch is known as Sinterklaasavond, which is Sinterklaas evening. If you know German, Guten Abend, Avond, those are the related words meaning evening. It's also known as Pakjesavond, which means literally packages evening, but the idea there is that it's gift evening. And so on that night, parents, family, friends, whatever you got, they tell the children that they found a note from Sinterklaas saying, hey, there's some presents over there, you should go find them. They might be hidden. Here you can see literally in like this burlap sack. The idea is like this is what Pete was carrying. He had this burlap sack full of presents and cookies and candy and that kind of stuff. Go find it. There might be clues to where it's hidden. It might just say go to this other room, or depending on the family, maybe a neighbor will knock on the door, leave the presents by the door, and then run away with the idea that Sinterklaas or Pete left it there. And then, just like Christmas morning in the U.S., it's a big toy jackpot for the kids. They make a huge mess with wrapping paper and just wreck the living room or whatever. In Belgium, however, the children have to wait until the morning of December 6th. So while St. Nicholas Eve is the big day in the Netherlands, St. Nicholas Day morning is the big one in Belgium. So they go to bed the night before, they set out their shoes, again with the poem or a wish list for Sinterklaas, carrots, hay, sugar cubes for the horse. There they might set out a bottle of beer for Pete, a cup of coffee for St. Nicholas. In some areas, if a kid is getting old enough to be done with their pacifier, they might place their pacifier in the shoe for Sinterklaas to take and for safekeeping. And in the morning, as a reward, St. Nicholas will have replaced it with a chocolate. All right, so here's the question. You can kind of see it in the picture. You might wonder, what are the kind of treats that are common in these areas, in the Low Countries, in Benelux? What are the common treats for Sinterklaas? Well, common treats include, like we said, mandarin oranges or tangerines, clementines, whatever you want to call them. Little, easy to peel, child-size oranges, chocolate coins, which you might have seen in one of the other pictures, and then the cookies that we mentioned, sorry, here you can see a variety of treats here. There's some chocolate coins. Yeah, here we go. Here's some peppernoten and some other different candies that you can see around. Here's a more regular children's shoe. But here we go. Here's peppernoten, which means pepper nuts in Dutch. If you might know, in Germany they have a cookie called Pfeffernusse, which also means pepper nuts. It's the same name. It's a different kind of cookie, but they're both spiced cookies. This is very small. The idea is that they're kind of thrown and scattered around for kids to pick up. But also there's Kruidnoten, which just means spice nuts, and these are similar, often confused, but it's a different kind of flavor, different kind of dough. And so it's slightly different, but also, again, kind of a nut-shaped and sized cookie that can be easily scattered for kids to go pick them up. Then there's also speculoos cookies, which are spiced shortbread cookies. You might have had these in the U.S. You can find them sometimes. The most common brand in the U.S. is Biscoff. So if you've ever had Biscoff, or if you've had cookie butter spread from Trader Joe's, or the cookie butter ice cream or anything from Trader Joe's, those are speculoos. And it's very good. If you haven't had it, I recommend it. But they're usually in traditional shapes, like a windmill is very traditional. There's these kind of images. They might look like people. They might have more holiday-related images. Sometimes they might be filled with like an almond paste for extra flavor. Then you might also have these. This is the sugar-based, which means sugar animal. It's, as you can see, they're little animals made of confectionery. It's like a mix of sugar and like evaporated milk or condensed milk, I mean to say. That kind of stuff. Then you have marzipan figures, which are very popular at Christmas all around Europe. Marzipan, of course, made from almond and then made into all sorts of different shapes. Little animals, fruits. Marzipan fruits are very popular and common at Christmas markets in Europe. Here you can see all sorts of different animals. Then you might see chocolate St. Nicholas's wrapped in foil, very similar to like how a chocolate Easter bunny might be in the U.S. Gingerbread cookies are also common. And then another really common one that you might have seen in some of the other pictures already are these chocolate letters. You get a big chocolate letter of the first initial of your first name, right? So this little girl's name starts with A. This girl's name starts with S. Yeah, this is really popular, very common custom. But besides these treats, there's also, of course, toys and other kind of presents. And the presentation of these presents is an essential part of the Dutch Sinterklaas experience. The present is usually wrapped in or packaged in a fun or humorous or unusual way. You can see this one's a fish. This is a minion. That's for somebody's grandma, I guess, because of the memes on her Facebook. And then you have all these different ones. This one's a huge snowman, really fancy. It might be you might put a small present in an enormous box for the sake of the surprise, or a present may be hidden and then you give clues how to find it, or you might put a nice present inside like an old potato or a dirty sock or something like that. And this kind of clever and ridiculous style, look at how over the top this is. There's Angry Birds here, a little karate man, a giant Lego, I don't know what's going on. There's a dog, but look at how fancy these are. Like, these are handmade. Making the packaging is much more important than the gift itself, right? The fun and the surprise of the packaging is the big thing. So each package is then marked. They're anonymous. They're marked as being from Sinterklaas, and they also accompany a personal message for the recipient, which is usually a poem, a funny, humorous, teasing poem that is supposed to kind of gently make fun of the recipient's bad habits or like character flaws. So if you want to open a present that also comes with a personalized diss track, the Netherlands might be for you. Some examples of ways of presenting gifts like this from the Netherlands include a story where like a little girl was handed the end of an unwound ball of yarn. She followed the yarn and had to wind it back up out the front door, around the backyard, into the neighbor's front door, out the neighbor's back door, around the yard, all around, until finally she gets to the end of the ball, or the end of the string, and at the end it says, "Look under your bed," and then she goes and looks under her bed and there's some gift that she really wants, right? That kind of thing. That's the kind of like thought and fun that is supposed to be put into this. This kind of presentation is called a surprise, like surprise, spelled like surprise, but pronounced in the French way because it comes from the French, and it means specifically this kind of present and not just like a surprise. All right, so yeah, originality, fun, more important than the monetary value of the gift. Um, in the Netherlands, adults get in on this fun as well, but in other parts of the region, Belgium and so on, Sinterklaas is largely for children. In some families where the kids get too old for the traditional Sinterklaas customs, the main gift giving day might get pushed back to Christmas. That's influenced by the way we do things in dumb old boring America. So that's the Netherlands. Let's take a quick look at a couple of other places where St. Nicholas Day is celebrated. So let's take a look at Germany. In Germany, St. Nicholas traditions are alive and well, but it's very important to know that it's an extremely regional thing. St. Nicholas is much more widely celebrated in the Catholic South than the Protestant North. So way back, I showed you the map of Germany, and I said focus on this area, Bavaria, and then Austria, Styria, Tyrol, these areas. That's where all of the spookiest Christmas stuff happens, and that's what I'm talking about. The Catholic South of Germany, rather than the more Protestant North. So just like in the Netherlands, the common thing among all these countries is going to be you set out your shoes on St. Nicholas Eve, maybe a letter for the saint, food for the horse, and you hope that you've been good enough to get fruits, nuts, candies, other treats. If you're bad, you might get coal, you might get a potato, or if you've been extra bad, you don't want to be visited by St. Nicholas's companion, the famous one. Here he is. You know the name. There he is. We'll talk about him next time. We'll talk about him or you'll notice them, really. There's two here. We'll talk about them at a great extent next time. In the Czech Republic, St. Nicholas, they call him Svatý Mikuláš, and leading up to his day, he gets lowered down from heaven. You can see here by angels. He's accompanied by these little angels. He's lowered down from heaven on a golden rope. He carries a basket, or in this card you can see he's got a bag of treats. And then he goes through the city, and he's accompanied by an angel and a devil, Chert and Andel. Nope, Chert and Andel. And we'll talk more about them next time, but similarly, they go through the city and they ask children about their behavior in the past year. The children answer well. If they sing a song, the angel will write their name down in the book. The devil might. This is a very goofy looking devil. Some of them are more frightening looking, more like the German Krampus, but they might rattle chains or wave their cheap plastic pitchfork at them, I guess, and but the angel will be like, no, I am here to protect this child. And so good children get, tangerines, nuts, chocolates, small gifts in their stocking. Again, bad children get a potato. And then in France, we can see here's Saint Nicolas. The most common regions, St. Nicholas is not celebrated in all of France, but in the regions in the north and the east, the ones that border the Benelux countries, and then Germany. That's where Saint Nicolas is most popular. The rest of the country celebrates Père Noël. We'll talk about him at another time. But Saint Nicolas and Père Noël have in common that they are accompanied by a little donkey with baskets of gifts and treats. Here, St. Nicholas's companion, you can see him here. He is based on that story that we talked about last time about the butcher who cut up the three little boys. We'll talk more about him next time. Common treats for the regions of France that celebrate St. Nicholas are manala, which is a brioche shaped like little dudes that are maybe supposed to represent the saint, although they just look like little dudes, so I don't know. Same deal that we saw before with shoes by the chimney and all that stuff. Children get chocolates, cookies, or most children also get a bundle of switches tied up with a ribbon to remind them that all children are a little bit naughty and they should be grateful that they did not get spankings. And then, as we look at more Eastern European countries like Hungary, Croatia, Ukraine, and Romania, similar deal. Children set out their shoes or their boots by the windowsill on December 5th. So Nicholas, who might be known as St. Miklos, but more commonly as Mikuláš in Hungary, Moch Nikolai in Romania, Svati Mykolai in Ukraine. They leave candy and gifts in the shoes if they've been good. And then, much like in France, most kids get this here. In Hungarian, this is called a virgac, which is, you can see it's a bundle of switches, but here it's very decorative. It's tied up with a nice bow. Some of them are often painted gold. This is a very common decoration for St. Nicholas Day, but again, this is supposed to represent the bundle of switches, like the Krampus, as he's called in Hungarian. Here he's got a separate kind of whip. This one's made of a horsetail. This one might not be with real bone, but traditionally it would have a real horse tailbone in there. But so again, to make you grateful that you're not getting whipped by the Krampus. Yeah, and in Ukraine, Svati Mykolai visits good children on December 5th and 6th of the old style calendar, the Julian calendar, like we talked about. So what that means is, by our reckoning, it's actually December 18th and 19th. So it seems like they're doing it, 13 days later. And in Ukraine, it's a little bit different. He puts presents under the pillow, like the tooth fairy. And again, you have the rod that's brought, known as a rizka in Ukrainian, with the idea that if you're bad, parents can discipline you with this. Svati Mykolai in Ukraine is usually accompanied by an angel and a devil, much like in the Czech Republic. And then in Italy, San Nicola, St. Nicholas, of course, is the patron of many, many different cities, but most notably Bari, which we talked about. This is the Church of St. Nicholas in Bari. That's where his body is supposed to be and where his magic healing liquid comes out. And so his main feast day there is actually the Festa di San Nicola, which is in May, to celebrate the translation of the relics. And during that period, May 8th, the relics of the saint are carried on a boat on the sea in front of the city, with many boats following behind. But for the actual, St. Nicholas, his main feast day in December, because he's associated with children and unmarried women, like we saw, December 6th, they have a ritual. It's called the Rito della Nubili, which means the ritual of unmarried women. And so what happens is, if you're a young woman and you're not married, but you want to find a husband, again, a lot of these rituals, these old-timey rituals, are about finding husbands for unmarried women. But if they want to get married, they go to an early morning mass, like 5 a.m., and then there's a column of miracles, they call it, and they have to walk around the column 7 times. That's in Bari. The city of Sassari has a similar tradition. On St. Nicholas Day, young women get gifts in order to help them get married. Who knows what those gifts might entail? I don't know. Let's talk about the good old USA. St. Nicholas is not commonly and not publicly observed nationally, and in fact, most Americans don't know the difference between St. Nicholas and Santa Claus. They think they're synonymous, and sure, maybe they are a little bit, but for Europeans, they're not. In the Netherlands, they have very strict rules about Santa Claus, and when you can put up pictures of Santa Claus, do not try to put up a picture of Santa Claus before Sinterklaas is over in the Netherlands, or you get in trouble. But in the U.S., cities that have strong connections to German culture, large German populations, cities like Cincinnati or Milwaukee, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, cities like that might have big public St. Nicholas Day celebrations, more on the scale of like what they do in Germany. And then, while it's not as widespread as it is in Europe, some families, especially Catholic families in the United States, might set out their shoes or an empty stocking by the fireplace or by the window or by the door for St. Nicholas. And the idea is, again, you get little gifts, little candy, treats, oranges, that kind of stuff. This kind of tradition is popular among Catholic families, but among families that have German, Polish, Belgian, or Dutch lineage, they might do that. And of course, in America, since Christmas is the biggest day that there is, these families usually also do Christmas, which is not always the case, right? A lot of these countries we're going to be looking at that have very strong traditions for St. Nicholas Day or Epiphany or New Year's Day might do those as the main gift-giving holiday instead of Christmas, sometimes in addition to Christmas, but Christmas is not always the big day for a lot of these countries. Like I said, in the Netherlands, it's St. Nicholas Day, and we're going to see some of the other countries, Spanish-speaking countries, Epiphany is the big day. In Italy, in most of Italy, it's Epiphany. That's about it for this week. That is the celebration of St. Nicholas Day. Next week, we will take a look at St. Nicholas's dark companions, the Krampus. We'll look at Zwarte Piet. We'll look at Belsnickel. We'll look at Shirt and Ondel. We'll talk about Per Fouettard. We'll talk about Knecht Ruprecht. We'll talk about Bergsol. We'll talk about Buzz the Bercht. I don't know. We'll talk about a bunch of them. There'll be a whole bunch, way more than you ever expected. So that's it. We'll do that next week. Until then, stay cool. Have a good Christmas.